The Supreme Court overturned a controversial Texas abortion law, but new research says the law may have caused abortion rates to fall. The law required abortions to be performed at ambulatory surgical centers by doctors with hospital admitting privileges. Just days ago, the state health department said in the law's first year, abortions fell by 15%. But the pro-choice crowd then celebrated when the high court said the law posed an unconstitutional burden on women seeking to end their pregnancy. Since the law was put in place, most of Texas's abortion clinics have closed, which the pro-life crowd sees as a win. That's our topic this half hour. We want to hear from you on our Fox 26 Facebook page. You can also send a tweet. Be sure to use the hashtag Fox26forlife. Joining us live in the newsroom, our panel led by our senior legal analyst, Chris Tritico, Democratic media consultant, Mustafa Tamiz, and Republican strategist and public policy analyst, Jackie Bally. So where do we go from here, Chris?
Well, now, so the law is unconstitutional, so it's no longer the law of the state of Texas. And Dan Patrick, in his press conference, has said that the legislature will take it up in the next session starting in January, and he will make it an emergency, at least for the Senate, make it an emergency, so it'll be one of the first things that the Senate takes up in the next session. How they get around, how they write around the U.S. Supreme Court's ruling will have to remain to be seen. But we know now that they cannot pass another law that requires the same restrictions that the Texas legislature passed in 2013. So that will not be the law anymore in the state of Texas. The interesting thing to me was when they passed the law in 2013, the law was passed because it was for women's health. In Dan Patrick's press conference, he was talking about that the abortions dropped by 20,000. No comments about women's health, Jackie Bally. So what was it about? Was it about women's health or was it about ending abortion?
It was both. Clearly, if you have higher standards for a doctor or for a surgical center, then it's clearly going to benefit the women who are going into these surgical centers to have these abortions. And so it was clear whenever our legislature passed it, they told us, look, we want doctors to have higher standards instead of the lower standards that were already there. We want the surgical centers to have better standards. And really, the admitting privileges that you have in a normal hospital is what they're saying they want people to have when you're performing something as dangerous as an abortion. I actually want to commend and thank our legislators because a majority of Texans agree with them. They do not agree with abortion, and a majority of Texans agree that this law is correct. Even Wendy Davis, when she ran for governor, tried to change her position on abortion because she knew even her constituents, a majority of black people and Hispanics, do not believe in abortion.
The court went along with the arguments against this law, saying that, you know, this is the only medical facility in the state that's required to have these types of restrictions, which indicates that it's really attacking just abortion, not for women's health.
Yeah, and everybody, I think generally everybody's in the same consensus. It's just a ruse to be able to say that. And we went from almost 44 clinics to less than 20 clinics, so over half were closed. And this percentage that you're seeing in terms of decrease, I think that, you know, there is some sense that that's a good thing, but at the same time, it's a misleading. Many people went to a different state to have an abortion, and the people that are advocating for this, I wish they put just as much emphasis on the kids as they're growing up. If they talked about early childhood education, if they talked about K through 12 funding, if they talked about, you know, how those kids could go to college, if they're supportive of children, it would be great. But it seems to be they're more concerned with how to control women's bodies than they're concerned with the outcome of children.
So where do you see the legislature going? We can't have these same restrictions. The Supreme Court has banned that, effectively banned that. So where's the legislature going to go? I mean, Dan Patrick said we're going to do it. What is he going to do?
We don't know that yet. I'm sure they are going to come up with new legislation that's going to help women's health. Going back to his statements, it was clear throughout the last session that education was a high priority. We had more funding going into education than we had before. We had a higher percentage going into education than the percentage of people going to schools. And the governor has made education a high priority. And I think that Dan Patrick and the legislatures are going to look at how they can make this. But don't you think that it's ironic ironic that the people who want to kill babies, who are pro-abortion, are the same people who don't want to kill people on death row. They're anti-death, the death penalty. I think that's very strange.
All right, let me go to Sally. She's monitoring our social media.
Okay, well, take a look at Twitter. The first tweet we're going to show you is from our Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. He says, as a co-writer of House Bill 2, I am disappointed by the decision, but will remain committed to protecting women's health and safety. And then Techno Library responded saying, hardly. It's a huge victory, this Supreme Court decision for women in this state. Who put you in charge of the health of women anyway? And Yay Ponies says reportable abortions in licensed clinical facilities fell sharply. There, fixed that for you, saying exactly what Mustafa was saying, that women are probably going elsewhere and not being treated by doctors.
Right, and I think that what that last tweet was referring to was, most of South Texas, half the state didn't have access to any facility to go to, and that was really what I think that last tweet and what you were referring to.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, and this debate will go on, and I think that it won't be that difficult for them to come up with some other technical ways of trying to shut down clinics. And since they control the legislature, both chambers overwhelmingly, and the governor is Republican, then they'll probably able to do that again, and it'll go to Supreme Court challenge once again, and it'll keep going back and forth. But I wish that they would focus on some other children's issues more than this.
The issue, and I think Mustafa's right, they're going to pass something new. It's going to go back to the U.S. Supreme Court. We're going to spend countless dollars litigating these issues time and time again. Wouldn't it be better just to sit down and come up with some other way to look at these things?
Well, I think they are. That whenever they came up with the last legislation, it was because, again, a majority of their constituents wanted that. A majority of constituents, polling after polling in our state, do not believe in abortion. And they came up with a very reasonable way to look at the health standards of women. It was quite clear that if you can go to an abortion clinic and anybody can perform it. The standards that they imposed in this legislation were much higher for the doctors who were going to perform it. Supreme Court Alito used the Gospel case as a prime example when that man not only killed babies, but he killed the patient.
Isn't the problem, and what the Supreme Court said, isn't the problem that you can't guise restrictions on abortion around health care for women? And isn't that part of the reason they overturned the case?
What I've used this example is that those who are on the fence with Donald Trump, this is exactly why they need to support him. Because liberals will interpret it a certain way, and conservatives will interpret.
That's what the Supreme Court ruled, not liberals. All right,
yes, they were liberals.
There.
That was a liberal ruling.
We'll be back in about 15 minutes with another really good topic.
Okay. Well